Live from Toronto, Canada, Earth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett on Zoomer Radio.
Thanks for inviting me into your home, long-haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' basement, your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. Hello and happy Easter and a blessed Passover to everyone listening in on our flagship station, Zoomer Radio, 740 kilohertz on the amplitude modulation band and 96.7 on the frequency modulation band. Hi to those of you checking us out on one of our affiliate stations from Alaska to New Mexico, North Dakota to South Carolina. Howdy to those of you streaming us on zoomerradio.ca and, of course, the YouTube channel. However, and wherever you're listening, I bid thee the warmest of welcomes, and I thank you for your fine company. The man with X-ray eyes, Canada's Edgar Cayce, remote viewer and trance-clairvoyant, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, is here to discuss the worst aviation disaster ever to occur on Canadian soil, Air Flight 1285, which crashed in Gander, Newfoundland back in December 1985. Douglas is best known as a trance-clairvoyant. He's a spiritual healer, teacher, published author who demonstrates many abilities studied by noetic sciences, the study of consciousness, including clairvoyance, telepathy, energy healing, remote viewing, prediction, and prophecy. He's one of a select few able to demonstrate all of these abilities, and even fewer who are considered a reliable information source. He teaches people the world over about spiritual development through the practice of meditation and the application of spiritual principles in daily life. He is the author of Secrets of Life, The Complete New Age Health Guide, The New Earth, A Prophetic View of Our Future, Gems of Wisdom, and Conversations with the Akashic Field. Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, welcome back to The Conspiracy Show. How are you, my friend?
Well, I'm preparing for Easter. I'm feeling well. I'm going to get to see the grandkids open up those little chocolate bunnies and watch those little guys zip around with all that sugar fix. So I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. It's good to be back on the show as always. Thanks, Richard.
And I know that in May you're getting ready to go back down to Texas. You have a quantum meditation course, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But just give us the dates and how people can sign up for this.
Yeah, it's we're establishing the Many Mansions Spiritual Center in Fort Worth. And this is part of the seminary, and this is how to do what I do. And we have classes every so often. And this class is coming up May the 24th until June the 1st. We have about a dozen people signed up so far. More information, go to my website, douglasjamescottrell.com. If you want to develop your ability for mind projection, remote viewing, clairvoyance, spiritual healing, and a lot of other things, this is a 9-day intensive course. And I encourage people, some of these students are coming back to take it again, a lawyer, a chiropractor, a registered nurse, people who have been to a lot of the other courses out there. So it is a good course, and I'm not just talking myself up here. It's an intensive, in-depth course. People will not be disappointed.
And people are coming from all over North America.
They are, yeah, they are. We've used to do it more in Hamilton, in Canada. We have people from Europe. Last time we were in Fort Worth, we had a man come from Croatia and all across the U.S. So people come sort of willy-nilly wherever they feel like they should come. They feel called, and they do come from across the U.S. and Canada and worldwide. But it seems to be every class is different, and people seem to come from far, far away, or they'll be up close. There'll be several Americans, a few Canadians, and a few people I sent from Europe. But it's really unpredictable where people seem to be called or where they come from. But it's from all over the world, and they do well. And they are practicing, and some of them have gone into a practice in helping people, which is their intention, and which is what I hope to do. If you want to be like Edgar Cayce, Paul Solomon, Ross Peterson, or myself, the so-called Last of the Sleeping Prophets, this is the course for anybody that's interested in that area.
Well, I know your intention is to teach people to do what you do, but there'll never be another you. Let's just get that straight. Now, I want to go back because we're going to dip into the case files, and this will give people really a good indication what you do as a remote viewer. And I remember we talked about this case many, many years ago, but I don't know that we actually discussed it on the air. And it's the Aero Air Flight 1285, which is still the worst aviation disaster on Canadian soil. Over 250 passengers. They were U.S. military personnel, 101st Airborne. And this was a horrible crash of, I think it was a DC-8 plane that took off shortly after, crashed shortly after takeoff in Gander, Newfoundland, on its way back to Kentucky, the Air Force base there. But let's just, for those not familiar or not old enough to remember, Aero Air Flight 1285, just walk us through the chronology here.
Okay. I was back in 1985. I was 35 years old. I had been contacted by members of our Defense Department, and I was actually doing consultations for various members in the Defense Department, the Canadian Defense Department, at several levels. Somewhere in there, I struck up let's say a friendship with Brigadier General Roger Lacroix, who was retired at the time. And he was, his wife was a major, and she was, I think, semi-retired. And I had done some personal consultations for them where I correctly identified a trip around the world that they were going to take, what was going to happen in different countries, including that at one time they're going to lose their luggage. Many of the things I said happened as they went on their world tour. And when they got back to Montreal, they were going to fly from Montreal to Ottawa, where they lived. And they remember having a conversation. They told me this later. They said, well, Douglas was amazing. He was right about the monkey on the shoulder, and it was this and that and the other thing. He said the only thing he missed was our luggage. We didn't lose our luggage. And with that, they got on the plane and flew from Montreal to Ottawa, and their luggage got on another plane and went to Vancouver.
Of course. At the last moment, you were proven correct.
Well, I just said these were some of the things that were going to happen. I don't know if the order was chronologically correct, but so when those things happened, my reputation is usually that I'm right, or I'm highly reliable in predicting events, the outcome of business meetings, looking for lost people, deceased people, things like that. I've been involved. So with the military, I was 35 years of age. I was nervous working for the military. I didn't want to be, found out to be some sort of black ops kind of psychic guy. But I did sessions, and there were several times that I worked with important people, put it that way. In this particular occasion, there was this mystery about this plane that had, I believe it come from Egypt, and it had 248 soldiers on board, and it had about eight crew.
Correct.
And the plane landed in Gander, in Newfoundland. It was bound for Fort Campbell in Kentucky. And it was Aeroflight 1285, I guess it was, the number.
Yeah, let me just stop you there. Just a quick thing that I don't know why I never noticed this before. But Aero Air Flight 1285, it crashed December 12th, 85.
Sort of a coincidence, right?
Well, no such thing.
That's right. That is a remarkable coincidence. At that point in time, there was a lot of controversy because this plane was fully loaded with soldiers. It landed in Gander. It was there for a short stay to refuel and then to continue on to Kentucky. The plane crashed very soon after takeoff. And it remains a mystery. It was on a peacekeeping mission on the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. So it was coming from the Middle East, and it was returning to the United States.
Right. And
at
again,
that point,
Sorry, I just wanted to remind people again, all 248 passengers, 8 crew members aboard perished, and this was the 101st Airborne Division. So these were American soldiers who landed in Gander to refuel en route to Kentucky. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
No, this is correct. And there was great controversy. There was great mystery. And so my friend, the general, called me up and said, would you... I was in Ottawa at some other time, and I had met several dignitaries. Yeah, I don't really tell people where I go. You and I once had a conversation where you said, I didn't know you did these things, Douglas. And this is part of what being the psychic guy is. You don't brag or say you've been bring down to see the movie stars, and you got your personal friend of George Carlin, or you've been in New York and you have seen mining executives, etc. It's kind of like anonymity is a very good thing. So in this situation, I was brought in, and I know zero about what happened, and they wanted to know, and I did a session for them, and what I saw became it became a good explanation, and it seemed to have evidence to prove what I had said, and it certainly was something that no one else thought of or anticipated.
We should point out, though, the official cause first, what the Canadian Aviation Safety Board, what they claimed the cause of the crash was.
Well, not all the members. It was, and I'm going to give you some inside information, and I'm going to give you what I was told. Of course, I was not there, never went to the crash site, never met anybody in person, and knew zero about what was going on or what was said. So the official cause under John Cosby, I think, was the Premier of Newfoundland, and he was, I think, involved in the Defense Department or Minister of Defense. It was ice on the wings caused the plane to crash. Ice on the wings caused the plane to crash. The only problem with that is that all military airplanes or aircraft are routinely de-iced prior to takeoff. So what the official cause was ice on the wings was completely contradictory to the practice at the airports to de-ice all the wings, any military aircraft or any aircraft carrying military personnel. So especially in Gander, Newfoundland, my God, you would think that this would be a routine thing, that there would be any kind of ice in the atmosphere or any chance of ice on the wings, that it would be de-iced. Now remember, we're taking off, we're not coming in for a landing, and this is not going through the air. Ice on the wings, because I'm a little bit of a private pilot, takes a long time to accumulate on the wings of a plane, and it causes the plane to stall. It doesn't cause the plane to crash, it causes it to stall, which means it falls out of the air. It's not like this particular crash. It nosed into the ground. If you look on the internet, you'll see that it nosed in. So the official cause was ice on the wings, which didn't match up to normal practice. And there was dissension among the Aviation Safety Board. So the official pronouncement of the cause came from, as I was told, John Crosby. He was adamant that was it. He wasn't going to take any other information, and that was the official cause, because the plane was coming from the Middle East, and the Americans didn't want it to be known that this was sabotage, that there had been a bomb on board. Okay, with that set up, the Aviation Safety Board members, who themselves, General Lacroix was an air combat jet fighter pilot, as were some of the other aviation board members. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of them that dissented. They just couldn't believe it, didn't want to believe it. They knew it wasn't the truth. And so where do they go from here? Well, Roger, the general, called me in, and he asked me to do a session. I was doing our quantum meditation, and I projected my mind into the plane at that time. And what I saw was, unbelievably, a cyanide bomb that was placed in the cockpit under the feet of the pilots. Now, to me, coming up with that sounds pretty spooky. Why was it placed in the cockpit under the foot of the pilots? Well, that meant that there was somebody somewhere along the line had gotten into a secure airplane and had planted a bomb.
Right. How would that go undetected in the cockpit, no less?
Exactly. And why a cyanide bomb? Why not an explosive bomb? Okay? Think about that. In military aircraft, or in this particular aircraft, there was no, as I was told, I mean, I was in the plane, I don't know, there was no bulkhead. It was open. As I understand it, I was told that the soldiers sit backwards in this plane, and they sit backwards in steel chairs, seats. When this bomb went off, it exploded, and again, I'm telling you what I was either told by the general and or what I had said, how it made sense, and what the evidence was and the conclusion of it. It went off, and the cyanide gas went through the cabin or the area of the plane, and it killed the pilots, and the plane crashed into the ground, killing everyone on board. When the plane crashed, many of the soldiers were decapitated because their head hit the bar.
Ah, yes.
In their lungs was traces of cyanide in the lung. How did the cyanide gas get into their lungs if they were killed on crash?
Now, wait a minute. The general told you, the general confirmed this, that there was cyanide gas in their lungs?
That's what I was told at the time.
Yes.
This is, and somewhere out there, I read it on the internet some time ago, where there was this information and this evidence of cyanide gas being in the troops' lungs. And of course, the thing is that the cyanide gas had to be going through the plane in order for the soldiers to breathe it in, to get it into their lungs. And then when they crashed, they were decapitated. So this is what I was told. I was also told that there was a huge uproar that they presented as evidence to Crosby and said, look, there was cyanide gas on this plane. Look, there was a bomb in the front of the plane. Look, these soldiers were dead before they hit the ground. This was sabotage. But at that point in time, John Crosby insisted it was ice on the wings. And as you read the reports out there, you'll find that there was a dissension in the National Transport and Safety Board members who were investigating the crash. So much so that at the end of it, the general and at least other members, one or two, resigned their position over this. They would not be party to this deception. Well, that's what I was told, what I know.
Right.
And the evidence seems to be out there that there was exactly what I had intuitively seen, this bomb in the front of the cockpit going off, gas going through the airplane and killing not only the crew, but everyone else on board. And of course, everybody was killed on the plane. Now think about this, it's on takeoff. You wouldn't expect a plane minutes after takeoff to have such a devastating crash. I had said also that they wanted to know, who planted it in Canada, who put the bomb on there. And the information was that it was put on in the Middle East, I guess when it took off from Egypt, and it was supposed to go off over the Atlantic, which would mean that the plane would have disappeared and there would never have been any evidence of this bomb going off the plane. But something happened where it misfired. In other words, it did not go off until it took off the second time from Gander. And as it took off in Gander, Newfoundland, then it went off.
Right. Now, when you were telling the general this, he already knew that he wanted confirmation, because he already knew that there was cyanide gas on board. He wanted to see, or wanted to find out what you. Oh, he didn't know that.
No, he didn't know. Nobody knew. I came up with that, And then they naturally, like all the professionals I deal with, I give them information, I give them a cause, and then they go and look for it. And that's what they did. They went back, and that's when they found, yeah.
Okay.
Because when the cyanide gas went off, the only evidence left was in the bodies of the dead soldiers, because when the plane hit the ground, it broke up, and there would be no, it's not like a chalk going off or like there's not a stain around it. It dissipated.
Right.
So it would be like looking for spray paint on the side of a wall. You could see the paint, but if you take the spray paint and shoot it up in the air takes away and there's no evidence. So that's what, it was not evident. It was not there until I brought it up, and then they went looking for it. And that's when they found evidence of the bomb going off in the cockpit at the pilot's feet, and also the cyanide gas in the bodies of the dead soldiers.
So the general came back to you and said, "You were right, Douglas."
That's right. And they were, and I was 35 years old. I got a young family, and I said, "Well, it's very nice to know, but, just keep my name out of it. Thank you very much."
Well, did he tell you, did he warn you, not that you needed to be warned, but did he tell you can't say this to anybody?
No, I was not sworn to secrecy or anything like that, because my reputation was that the integrity was I would tell people what I would see intuitively, but I would keep my mouth shut. And that's how it was. I mean, there are some people out there who come up with a prediction, there was an earthquake somewhere, and then they want it all over the internet that they predicted it. And I was the reverse. I was not shy, but I certainly was quiet about it. But I was personally pleased that I was able to help our government, and was able to help the general. We became close friends after that.
We'll take a quick time out. We'll come back and continue to talk a little bit more about Aero Air Flight 1285, and also we'll talk Earth changes, and we'll also talk some more about Dr. Douglas James Cottrell's quantum meditative course that's happening in Texas next month. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. Stay with us. Dr. Douglas James Cottrell stays with us, remote viewer, Canada's Edgar Casey. His website, Dr. Douglas James, I'm sorry, it's just Douglas James Cottrell, isn't it?
That's not correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
The website, douglasjamescottrell.com, and we'll tell you some more about his quantum meditation course that's happening in Texas, in Fort Worth, next month, a little bit later in the program. Right now we're talking about Aero Air Flight 1285, and this was the military plane carrying about 250 U.S. military personnel that were returning home from a peacekeeping mission in the Sinai Desert in December of 1985, crashed shortly after refueling in Gander, Newfoundland, en route back to Fort Campbell in Kentucky. All 248 passengers were killed, in addition to 8 crew members. And Douglas was asked to remote view this air disaster, the worst on Canadian soil in Canadian history. And Douglas discovered that it was not, the crash was not caused by ice accumulation on the wings or a failure to de-ice. He remote viewed a cyanide capsule that exploded in the cockpit, that spread to the rest of the plane, and that killed the pilots, and that caused the crash. This was later confirmed to him by that general.
Well, and also, Richard, a point that I did not know until recently was that the 101st Airborne Division, they had taken off from the Cairo airport, and as I said, they were headed to Fort Campbell in Kentucky with a stopover in Gander. The crash occurred 3 miles away from the Gander control tower, which means it was a very short takeoff, okay? And the wreckage was spread across an area about 1,300 feet by 130 feet wide, according to some reports, which means that nosed in pretty solid. It didn't land like a solid plane with ice on the wings, which would mush into the ground. Their pilots would have some control. They would have the landing gear down. they would be in an upright position. This crashed into the ground without any control. I'm not sure if the wheels were up or down. I don't know for that for sure, but that would be another bit of information to say that.
Right.
At that distance, they were in flight. So a little bit of information I didn't know, and I think why Mr. Cosby, who was in the cabinet as a defense minister, and his putting his foot down on this, if you will, and suppressing the truth, because the American military did not want to admit that there was a terrorist attack. However, almost immediately after the crash, there was the terrorist organization Islamic Jihad telephoned a U.S. consulate in Algeria and said that the group was responsible for the crash at Gander.
Yes, this was a Shiite Muslim extremist group.
Right. So the psychic guy says there was a bomb, cyanide gas, went through the plane. Soldiers who were decapitated had cyanide gas in their lungs. Said this was a terrorist attack. The government, through Minister Crosby says no, it wasn't. And then immediately you have a terrorist group call up and say, yes, they caused the crash.
Right, and
2 and 2 is 4.
Exactly, and further to your point, that why they would want to keep this secret is that Islamic Jihad said that their plan was to destroy the plane to prove the ability to strike at the Americans anywhere.
There you go.
So the order obviously then came down to Defense Minister John Crosby and the Canadian government. Listen, we can't talk about this. We have to deny this.
That's exactly right. This was a typical cover-up by members of the Canadian government at the perhaps behest of the U.S. military, and because of the honorable men who were on the National Transport and Safety Board, it was a member that 4 of the members dissented. 4 of them, not one, thinking, maybe it wasn't ice on the wings, maybe it was like a seagull getting stuck in the engine. There was 4 of them dissented because they didn't want to put their name on it.
Nearly half.
That's right.
Of 4 of the 9, and they so lost the Canadian public so lost confidence in them after this particular investigation that the federal government had to basically disband the CASB. They disbanded it, and they had to create a new regulatory board. That's when the Transportation Safety Board of Canada came in and replaced it as a result of that botched investigation. Now, after that, were you ever visited? I'm not going to call them Men in Black. That's such a cliche. But were you ever visited by, the RCMP or anyone saying, "How did you know?"
Well, the short answer is no. I had the Brigadier General who would be talking me up. That this is what the psychic guy said, and he had my reputation or he had the evidence that what I said based on previous information I'd given him to be incredible. He took a lot of flack from that. I tried to disgrace him. That he was dealing with, the psychic guy kind of thing. But I also was involved in the Air India crash, and I gave information that proved to be evidence on that crash, which was another air crash disaster.
Yes. Well, maybe we'll do that one we'll go into depth on that one on another show.
Yeah. Well, this was a time in my life when I was working for the military, and I shouldn't say that. I was working for individuals who happened to be members of the military and or some different, like the National Transport and Safety Board people. So, getting to this, if you look at it, it's still to this day controversial because this idea that it was ice on the wings, and everybody who's flown an airplane, especially in the military, knows that it didn't pass the smell test. That there was a terrorist organization who called up immediately and claimed responsibility for that. and that there was no evidence on board that an onboard explosion had caused the crash. But the plane was spread out, as it was something that happened. Eyewitnesses seemed to contradict the government statement that they claimed they had seen explosives or ammunition being carried on as cargo on the plane in Cairo. So it's in plain sight, and I gave them. I was the. I put all the pieces together in seeing in my intuitive mind what happened, as if I'm watching a movie, which is how I see things. They appear very quickly, one scene after the other. Pardon me.
Right. Did the military?
Excuse me.
Did members of the Canadian Defense Department, or Ministry of Defense, I should say, did they, after you had sort of made your reputation with them, did they come back to you on other cases?
Well, I did. As I said, I worked a little bit with other people in different areas. And again, it was a matter that they knew. I didn't have to sign a disclaimer, a non-disclosure form or anything like that. They just knew they came, they paid cash, and they left. And I had one man come who once said to me, he was a very spooky guy, who said, "Well, I want to tell you that you have helped me very much today, but you're never going to hear of me or see me again." I went, wow. So back in the day, I was looking over my shoulder every now and then because I thought that maybe if there was a cover-up going on of this magnitude, the worst air disaster in our country's history at that time, and I thought, maybe I might just disappear. But as time went on, that never happened, but it was in my mind at the time. But again, there have been different times where people have contacted me for other reasons, and some with the military, some with police matters and things like that.
All right. Listen, we're going to take a quick time out, Douglas. When we come back, let's spend some time talking about some earth changes, and also we have to talk about that horrible fire that almost destroyed the great Notre Dame Cathedral, and we'll talk about your quantum meditation course coming up in Fort Worth, Texas in May. All that and more with Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, Canada's Edgar Cayce, right here on The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Sarat. Stay with us. Douglas, I have to ask you about the great fire in Notre Dame at the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and whether you've had any visions or had an opportunity to remote view what might have happened. I mean, officially, investigators there are saying, well, they have ruled out sabotage, they have ruled out terrorism, although, to be honest, I thought they came to that conclusion pretty quickly. I mean, who knows? This could be another case of covering up for something. Have you had any visions or remote viewed the fire? Okay, well, as it came across the news, when my mind hears something, I usually see a picture in my mind. And what I was looking at was heavy equipment up there, and they were using some sort of heater, some sort of propane, something or other, or I saw a round ball of something that I thought was a piece of equipment, and it was just left. I don't see any sabotage. I agree. This was, as much as the Catholic Church is in difficulty these days, I don't think this is some retaliatory strike because of the situation with the bishops and the priests and the problems with children. I think this was truly an accidental situation. But again, in the understanding of the spiritual world, there are no such things as coincidence or accidents, so to speak. And I had said this to when I was doing my talk at the Mini Mansion Center in Hamilton, that I think this is a disaster that's going to pull Christians and in particular the Catholic Church together. That this has a silver lining, so to speak, and that is it is going to bring people together. Like all difficulties and disasters, enemies will come together when there's a natural disaster. And that's what I think the reason under God's rule or law
and light has allowed this to happen. It is a terrible disaster. I didn't feel bad about it, like a disaster, but I was nervous the day or two before, like I usually do when something horrific is going to happen in the world. I just kind of feel, like nervous, like a kitty cat. Something's going to happen, and this was it. So the answer is that I didn't see it as tourists or willfully done. I saw it as an accident. I saw a piece of something look like a big sphere, round shape, and that caused the fire. I do. I want to say that two things. One is there with the cross, the golden cross. Even when the fire was burning, was, if you look at the news coverage, it was illuminated and it was shiny. And even after the cleanup, it was shining. I took that as some sort of divine message that that golden cross was there, shining through the ashes, if you will.
Right.
And then also, just to because we're on the subject, if people are going to donate money to them, be careful that you make sure you go on the official website for to donate money. Unbelievably, there are charlatans and what do you call it? Scams going out there right now. So make sure you know that you go to the correct website to donate money. I'm going to donate some money myself, and I would encourage everybody to do this. But this is a horrific thing, but I think the purpose is yet to be found in a spiritual way to bring Catholics and people together when it is the darkest hour for the Catholic Church at this point.
Right. You mentioned propane tanks. I mean, there was renovations going on, and someone mentioned that someone had been welding in the general vicinity where the fire took place. But I don't know. You certainly have an incredible track record. Here's why I remain suspicious, and no one seems to be talking about this in the press, and that is. In fact, someone tried to bring this up on a cable news show, and they were cut off. But it's true. Over the last several weeks, no fewer than a dozen churches in France have been vandalized and desecrated. And here we are, entering the most holy week in the Christian calendar, and then, perhaps the most well-known Catholic cathedral in the world goes up in smoke.
Well, I'm not going to rule it out, Richard. I saw a round sphere. I saw somebody. It looked like a tank or a propane tank, but all that was a flash. When I came on the news and I saw it, I had this image. So I'm not going to say it was willfully sent, but I didn't get that grungy feeling. I just was nervous before it happened, which was clairsentient ability. It remains yet to be seen. And like all the things I do, including this crash of the DC-8, the evidence after the fact proves what I have seen. And so maybe when we see a big round canister up there, or there is this further investigation, that maybe we can have a little closer look at that. But at this point in time, I think that you're on the money. I agree with you that there's an attack on all these religious icons, and this is the most notable. I mean, it's the number one symbol of the Catholic Church, and it could very well be. But I was taking it more. My impression was this has some benefit in the future,
right,
to bring people together.
We'll take another quick time out. When we come back, let's talk about maybe some other earth changes going on. And, of course, we'll talk about your quantum meditation course happening next month in Fort Worth, Texas. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serrett. Stay with us. We are back with Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, and let's spend a few moments talking about earth changes. I know you've taken note of weather patterns and how they seem to be changing. We're not talking about climate change here, but weather patterns, and well, you explain.
Well, let's step back in time a little bit, and it was on your show years ago that I had said that I had a dream vision in which the core of the Earth was rotating at a slower speed than the crust, and that the oceans were going to heat up to 2 or 4 degrees Celsius. I announced that on your show, and as far as I know, I was the first one to even talk about this oven inside the world of the Earth's mantle moving at a different speed than the crust. And I also, on your show, challenged Dr. Suzuki to have a look at it, and I think a year or two later, some scientists came out and validated that the crust and the Earth's core were rotating at different speeds. But, as usual, it was a normal occurrence. Well, nobody had thought about that before, and I don't think it was normal at all. My attention was drawn to it. And that, my friends, is where the greenhouse gases are not really heating up the planet. It's the Earth's core that's causing this huge temperature change, this friction, causing the thinnest part of the core, which is at the bottom of the oceans, to be exposed to this great heat. And the oceans are heating up, and this is causing the weather pattern changes. It's causing the ice caps, which are melting at an alarmingly fast rate. And also we're looking at the Earth wobbling and tilting back. And I've noticed in our weather pattern that when I was growing up, all the weather, snows, rainstorms, windstorms, came from the northwest Torrey's Yukon down from the northwest towards the southeast, underneath Hudson's Bay, James Bay, and out to the east coast. Now I've noticed that our weather seems to come from Texas and the Caribbean, and going up to Quebec and toward to the Maritimes. So we have a change from the weather coming instead of from the north, but from the south. And I've been predicting this before. We're going to see more flooding in places like Kentucky. Never before where there has been disasters of floods. It's going to happen now in that area. There are, this Yosemite, Wyoming volcano. I've also said on your show, I saw a wall of lava coming across from the west towards the east, and choking gas coming across to the people who were in an airport not too far away east of it. And there is an airport that is east of that small place. So that's yet going to happen. And well, we've noticed that with the heating up from the Earth's core, volcano activity is happening more and more on a regular basis. And we're looking for Mount Etna and Vesuvius to go off at the same time. And when that happens, that's kind of the countdown for more disasters to take place. Recently, I was aware that somebody has done an internal, I don't know how he did it, but it was like an internal mapping of the Earth's crust and the tubes or channels. It looks like a fork of the Earth's crust, and these forks are coming up in Europe and also in other parts of the world in what we call the southern hemisphere. So however he had this map that he's been mapping has been pretty accurate. And this goes along with what I'm seeing as, in countries that are in conflict, they seem to be also in natural disasters. So I'm looking forward now. We're going to see more of difficulties with the weather, but we're also going to see difficulties with famines or disease going through the herds in the southwest, beef and cattle. So we're going to have some exposure to that. Whether that's because poison gas or whether it's poisoning the environment, I'm not sure, but that's going to happen. We're also going to see these extremes in right now, the flooding in the Midwest. Crops are failing. They failed for 2 years. The farmers are now at a point where they had their money in the bank, so to speak, their grain in silos, but the silos have now been decimated and the grain has been lost. So we're going to see disastrous prices in corn and wheat and the bread products, which I have been predicting. I think I predicted on your show as well. That's all happening right now. So in this time, be prepared, have enough food or something in reserve that you could last 6 or 8 months should there be some sort of storage shortage, I should say.
We just have a few moments yet. Let's talk about your quantum meditation course that you're teaching in Fort Worth, Texas. First of all, give us the dates, how people can register, and then we'll get into some more details.
Okay, if people are interested and they should be serious, they have to be able to able to see things in their mind's eye. I have a requisite test that I do for that, so they have to be able to demonstrate clairvoyance, remote viewing, or mind projection. It's coming up May the 24th, and it goes till June the 1st. It's a 9-day intensive course. It encompasses all of the abilities. We talk one-on-one. Everybody has sufficient time to ask me questions on any subject, and we explore all the different aspects of developing your remote viewing capability, your clairvoyant ability. Plus, we also do some energy work or spiritual healing to open up the chakras, and also the pineal gland, which is the psychic center. That's something I do. I don't think anybody else does that. We have students who you can call up and ask them what the course was like and how they did. And these are incredible people, and they speak from the heart. So we have been doing this for a few years, and this is, I'm not going to say I'm going to announce my retirement here, but I'm getting pretty close to 70, and so I will be doing more, talking about buffalo chips and the good old days at lectures, and I will be working for people like I have over the last 45 years. So I'm looking for people to replace me.
All right, and this is happening in Fort Worth, Texas, May 24th to June 1st. And again, how do people register?
Just go on my website, douglasjamescottrell.com, and there's information there all about the course and what's going to be done. And also, again, we can give some former students contact information. They can call them up for, ask them questions. They're not paid. They're doing this because they believe in what was given to them. So go to Douglas James Cottrell, COTTRELL.com. And my name's all over the internet, so even if you don't quite get it right, Douglas James something or other should pop up, Douglas James Cottrell. And of course, they can go to your show, and I'm all over your website, I'm sure, right?
Oh, yes.
Different times.
Yes, and I will post the details on the website, or people can just click on your name on the front page under the guest listing, and that'll take them right to your website. So if you're looking to sort of slowly ease out, have you met, do you think, your successor? Do you think you have an idea who that person might be already based on these courses that you've taught?
Well, I'll give a shout out to my friend Tom, who has actually interviewed some of the students. I cannot support, validate, or indicate, anybody's ability, but I can say they've taken the course, and it's Ramstein Regelin on the YouTube channel. He's interviewed a few of the students. There is a namesake. Her name is Jessica Cottrell, who is in Detroit. We have the same name. We must be related somewhere, but she has her own spiritual center in Detroit, Michigan. So he has interviewed some of them, and that's one way to go. But I've met people who have the capability to do so. So I'm looking at people who can survive and thrive on their own reputations.
May 24th to June 1st, Fort Worth, Texas, a 9-day intensive course with Douglas James Cottrell. Just click on his name on the website, the Conspiracy Show website. First go to strangeplanet.ca, then find the radio page, and you'll see Douglas's name. Click on that. That takes you right to the website. Douglas, always a pleasure. Be well, my friend. Talk soon.
God bless you. Happy Easter to you and your family, my friend. God bless.
Bye-bye. Well, that's it for us. We are done. My thanks to Owen Wolf and Ryan White. Back next week with paranormal investigator Joshua P. Warren and Pastor Mark Biltz on the identity of the Antichrist. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed, and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper, proclaim from the rooftops. Move over, Aphrodite, I'm coming home. Good night.